Hey guys, tonight we delve into the chilling hour when the veil thins, into a time often whispered about, a moment when the world feels different. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop your city and local time in the comments so we know who's listening tonight. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. I looked at the clock. The glow was faint in the dark room, but the numbers were clear. 3:33 a.m. It felt like an ordinary, lonely hour in the dead of night. I was lying there, struggling to breathe. It had been like this for a while now. A heavy pressure on my chest, a desperate gasp for air that never quite filled my lungs. Doctors had tried everything. But whatever this was, it was winning. And then, suddenly my heart just stopped. It wasn't a violent jolt or a dramatic collapse like you see in movies. It was a cessation. A quiet, almost polite ceasing of function. 1 second there was the struggle. The next there was nothing. Absolute silence in my chest where the frantic drumming had been just moments before. But the awareness didn't stop. That was the first shock. My body was still there. Below me now, I saw myself lying in the bed, pale and still. The room looked different from up here. Near the ceiling, the shadows seemed deeper, the air thicker, charged with something I couldn't name. It was like the familiar dimensions of my bedroom had gained an extra layer, an unseen frequency I was now tuned into. I was floating, not flying, just effortless suspension. There was no up or down, just a detachment from the physical. I tried to move my hands, to feel my face, but there was no physical form to command. Yet, I existed, a point of consciousness, observing, and that's when I felt it. Or rather, I felt them. Something was waiting for me, just beyond the edges of the room, in the deeper shadows that clung to the corners. It wasn't a person, not in any way I understood. It was a presence, multiple presences, perhaps coalescing from the darkness. They didn't have eyes or mouths, but I knew they were watching, and they were expectant. A cold dread, unlike any fear I'd known in life, began to seep into my non-existent limbs. It wasn't the fear of death itself, because in that moment, death felt less like an ending and more like a transition. No, this was the fear of the unknown on a cosmic scale. The fear of whatever lay waiting in the profound darkness that was now beginning to swallow the edges of my bedroom. The silence wasn't empty. It hummed with a low, resonant frequency, a vibration that seemed to emanate from these waiting presences. It wasn't a sound heard by ears, but felt by the very core of my being. It was a sound that spoke of ancient things, of places far beyond the realm of the living. I wanted to scream, but I had no voice. I wanted to run, but I had no legs. All I could do was float there, an observer in my own departure, feeling the subtle, terrifying pull towards the darkness where they waited. The light from the digital clock, still showing 3:33, seemed impossibly far away now, a tiny beacon in a rapidly expanding void. Was this it? Was this the end? Not a bright light, not pearly gates, but a silent, cold ascent into the shadows, met by unseen watchers. My life, the sum of my experiences, my loves, my regrets, did it all lead to this moment? This chilling rendezvous at 3:33 a.m. The feeling of being watched intensified. It wasn't hostile. Not exactly. But it was utterly alien. It felt like being examined under a microscope by entities who understood the fundamental particles of my existence in a way I never could. They knew everything about me, my deepest secrets, my most fleeting thoughts, without a single word being exchanged. The knowledge was simply there, flowing between us in that silent, vibrating darkness. And the darkness itself wasn't just the absence of light. It was a substance, a heavy, pressing presence that seemed to absorb all warmth, all sound, all color. It was the opposite of everything I knew about reality. It was the void, and I was drifting right into its heart. I thought about my family, my mother, my father, my sister. Would they find me? Would they understand what happened? Or would they simply see a body, lifeless and cold? The thought brought a pang of sorrow, but even that felt distant, muffled by the overwhelming reality of my current state. My earthly concerns seemed trivial from this vantage point, seen through the lens of this immense, waiting darkness. There was a sense of inevitability. I couldn't resist the pull. It was gentle, almost imperceptible, but relentless, like a tide drawing the piece of driftwood out to sea. The room, my body, everything familiar, began to recede, shrinking into a distant memory as the darkness enveloped me further. The temperature dropped, not in the way physical air gets cold, but a spiritual, bone-deep chill that seemed to freeze my very essence. This wasn't the gentle passing I'd sometimes imagined. This was raw, unadulterated transition, stripped bare of comfort or familiarity. It was just me, my consciousness, and the waiting darkness. I reflected on my life in those fleeting moments. Had I been a good person? Had I made a difference? Did any of it matter now? In the face of this, the questions felt small, almost irrelevant, against the backdrop of this vast, unknown void. Yet, the feeling of being judged, not by a voice, but by the sheer, impartial knowledge of the presences, was profound. It wasn't a moral judgment in the human sense, but a simple, undeniable understanding of the energy my life had generated. And then, the numbers 3:33 flashed in my mind again. Not from the clock, but imprinted on my consciousness. It felt significant, like a cosmic timestamp on my departure. Why this time? What was special about 3:33 a.m.? It felt like a marker, a signal, the exact moment the veil had thinned enough for me to pass through. The waiting presences seemed to lean closer. I still couldn't see them clearly, They were just denser pockets of the darkness, but I felt their collective gaze, their silent observation. There was no threat, but no comfort either. Just an ancient, passive awareness. Was I going to be trapped here, in this silent, dark space with these silent, watching entities? The thought was paralyzing. Had I made a mistake? Had I taken my life for granted? Had I missed opportunities to connect, to love, to forgive? The regrets surfaced, sharp and clear. Even in this disembodied state, they hung in the dark air like echoes of a life now past. But as the darkness grew thicker and the pull stronger, I began to notice something else. A faint hum beneath the silence, a different vibration from the one emanating from the watchers. It was distant, like a far-off train, but it was there. And it felt different, less heavy, less cold, perhaps promising. The thought barely formed before the pull intensified, and the last vestiges of the room, of my body, vanished. There was only the darkness now, absolute and complete, and the silent, waiting presences. And somewhere, far, far away, that faint, persistent hum. The darkness wasn't empty. It wasn't the mere absence of light you experience when you close your eyes or stand in a moonless field at midnight. This darkness was present. It was a medium, thick and velvety, that held me suspended. I had no sense of gravity, no feeling of standing, sitting, or lying down. I simply was, floating in this boundless, lightless expanse. It felt vast, stretching out in every direction infinitely, yet also strangely intimate, pressing in on me from all sides. The chilling cold from the room had deepened here. It wasn't the biting cold of winter air, but a pervasive, existential frigidity that seemed to touch my very core. It felt like the temperature of absolute zero, but applied to the soul. There was no physical discomfort, just a profound sense of spiritual coldness. A stark reminder of the life I had left behind and the warmth of physical existence. The silent presences that had watched me from the edges of my room seemed to have dissolved back into the darkness. Or perhaps they were still there, just absorbed into the environment. I didn't feel their focused gaze anymore, but the sense of being in a place of immense, ancient awareness lingered. It was like floating in the bloodstream of a colossal, dormant entity. In this void, the noise of my life, the frantic thoughts, the worries, the physical aches all faded away. There was a deep, profound silence. But, as I had sensed at the very end of my time near the body, this silence wasn't absolute. Beneath it, there was that hum. It was still faint, like a distant vibration, but it felt significant. It was the only hint of anything beyond this immediate, pressing darkness. While I had no physical body to feel fear in the conventional sense, no racing heart, no shaking hands, but the emotional equivalent was there. A deep-seated apprehension that resonated through my disembodied consciousness. Where was I? Was this hell, purgatory, or simply the interim? The space between what was and what is to come. The silence offered no answers. The darkness gave no clues. It was a state of pure, suspended uncertainty. Time seemed to cease. Or perhaps it became something different. There was no sunrise, no sunset, no ticking clock, certainly no 3:33 here. I couldn't gauge how long I had been floating. Minutes, hours, eons, without external reference points. My human understanding of duration was meaningless. I was simply in the darkness. For as long as I was in it, my thoughts, freed from the limitations of the brain, seemed different. They weren't linear or verbal. They were more like pure concepts, images, and feelings. I could recall moments from my life with startling clarity, not like watching a movie, but like being there again, experiencing the emotions, the sensations. I revisited brief flashes, the warmth of the sun on my face, the smell of rain on hot pavement, the sound of laughter, the sting of betrayal. These memories weren't just mental recall, they were experiential echoes vibrating within the darkness. This non-linear thought process also brought an unexpected sense of understanding. Connections between seemingly unrelated events in my life became clear. The ripple effects of my actions, both good and bad, were laid bare, not in a judgmental way, but as simple cause and effect. It was a detached, objective review, conducted not by an external force, but by my own expanded consciousness. I saw the pain I had caused, often unintentionally, and the joy I had brought. There was no guilt, just a profound, sorrowful understanding of the interconnectedness of everything and the impact of even the smallest interaction. The silence of the void amplified this internal reflection, with no external distractions. My consciousness turned inward, exploring the landscape of my own being. Who was I, really? Stripped of my physical form, my name, my roles. I was a collection of experiences, a history of choices, an energy signature. And in the vastness of the darkness, even that felt tiny, insignificant. Yet, amidst the insignificance, there was a strange sense of peace beginning to emerge. The struggle of life, the constant striving, the pressures, they were gone. There was a pure, unadulterated existence, just being, floating, witnessing the echoes of a life lived. The coldness was still there. The uncertainty lingered. But the frantic fear of the initial moments began to subside, replaced by a quiet, contemplative state. The hum, though still faint, felt like the only directionality in this directionless space. It seemed to be calling to me, not with sound, but with a subtle energetic resonance. It was the only thing that wasn't the darkness. It represented something else. Hope. A destination. A continuation. I focused on it. Or rather, my consciousness drifted towards it. It wasn't a conscious decision in the human sense. More like a natural inclination, an energetic alignment. The hum felt warmer than the surrounding cold void, more vibrant than the silence. It was a subtle promise of existence beyond this interim state. As I drifted, the nature of the darkness seemed to shift slightly. It wasn't less dark, but perhaps less dense. The pressure wasn't as absolute, and the hum began to grow. Ever so slightly, it was like a tiny pinprick of sound in an ocean of silence, gradually increasing in volume. Or perhaps I was simply getting closer. This shift brought a new wave of emotion. Anticipation. Where was the hum coming from? What would I find if I reached it? Was it the next stage of this journey, or just another facet of the unknown? The fear returned. But it was different now, less about the void itself, and more about what lay ahead. Floating in the darkness felt like being suspended between two worlds. The world I had left, now a fading memory, and a world yet to be revealed, hinted at only by a distant hum. It was a state of pure potentiality, frightening in its emptiness, yet holding the promise of something. I thought about the concept of the other side that religions and stories spoke of. Was this it? Was this void the waiting room, the limbo before judgment or ascension? Or was it simply a natural stage of consciousness after physical death, like shedding a skin? The lack of familiar landmarks, of any clear signs or beings besides the initial silent watchers, made it impossible to tell. The only constant was the drifting, the effortless movement through the dark, and the growing presence of the hum. It was becoming clearer now, a distinct frequency, a vibration that felt inherently good. It resonated with a sense of peace, of belonging, something the cold darkness lacked entirely. It was like hearing a faint melody in a soundproof room, knowing it was coming from somewhere beyond the walls. As the hum grew stronger, the feeling of being observed lessened completely. The waiting presences of the darkness seemed to be part of the space I was leaving behind. My journey was now directed towards the source of this growing vibration. It was a solitary journey, guided only by this unseen, unheard call. The darkness itself seemed to deepen its hue directly behind me, as if sealing off the path I had taken. There was no going back. The only way was forward, towards the sound, towards the light it seemed to promise, even though no light was visible yet. It was a profound lesson in letting go. I had no control here, no ability to steer, to stop, to question the direction. I was simply being moved, carried along by an unseen current towards the source of the hum. All my earthly attachments, my plans, my worries, my very identity, were irrelevant here. All that remained was my consciousness, floating, and this growing, beckoning vibration. The hum was starting to feel less like a sound and more like an energetic pull, a magnetic force drawing me in. It felt like returning home, to a place I didn't consciously remember, but which my deeper being recognized. The cold of the darkness began to feel less intense, or perhaps the warmth of the hum was starting to counteract it. And then, in the absolute, pervasive darkness, a subtle change occurred. Not a light, not yet, but a feeling, a shift in the texture of the void ahead. It felt less dense, less heavy, and the hum reached a certain intensity, vibrating through my essence. It was just before the light appeared. In that final moment of floating in the rich, profound darkness, guided only by the growing hum, that I knew this wasn't the end. It was merely the passage. And what came next? Well, that was the true destination. Continuing the narrative. The shift in the darkness ahead wasn't gradual. One moment I was floating in the thick, cold void, the hum my only companion. And the next, the space in front of me tore open. It wasn't a violent rending, but more like a zipper being pulled rapidly down the fabric of reality. And behind that tear, there was movement, and that hum intensified dramatically. Not just louder, but richer, fuller, vibrating through my entire disembodied consciousness. I was being drawn forward, incredibly quickly. It felt like being pulled by an unseen, benevolent force. The space I was entering wasn't empty like the void had been. It was a tunnel, or something resembling one. It wasn't made of solid matter, not like concrete or earth. It seemed to be formed of energy, or perhaps a higher dimension of existence that my limited consciousness perceived as a passage. The walls of the tunnel weren't opaque. They swirled with colors. Not colors I recognized from the earthly spectrum, but hues that seemed alive, pulsing with light and energy. Vibrant indigos, electric violets, shimmering golds, and deep, resonant greens flowed and danced around me as I sped through. It was beautiful, overwhelmingly beautiful, a stark contrast to the absolute blackness I had just left. And the sound, the hum, had transformed. It was no longer a faint vibration, but a symphony, not of instruments or voices, but of pure tone. It was a sound that felt like perfect harmony, resonating within me rather than being heard by ears I didn't possess. It was the sound of creation, of energy flowing, of everything being exactly as it should be. It filled the tunnel and filled me, washing away the last vestiges of the fear and coldness from the void. My speed was astonishing. I felt like I was traveling faster than light, faster than thought. Yet there was no wind resistance, no physical strain. It was effortless, exhilarating movement. The swirling colors on the walls blurred into streaks of light, creating a sense of incredible velocity. It was like being an electron fired through an accelerator, except the journey felt purposeful, guided, and imbued with profound meaning. And ahead, there was the light. It wasn't a distant star or a bright lamp. It was a light that filled the end of the tunnel, growing larger and more intense with every fraction of a second I sped towards it. This light was different. It wasn't just illumination, it was presence. It radiated warmth, not physical heat, but a spiritual warmth that felt like the most comforting embrace imaginable. It emanated pure, unconditional love, acceptance, and understanding. As I got closer, I could see that the light wasn't static. It pulsed and expanded, a dynamic source of energy. It felt alive, conscious. The hum intensified further, seeming to emanate from the light itself, the source of the perfect harmony. The tunnel journey felt incredibly quick. Yet paradoxically, there was a sense of timelessness within it. I wasn't just moving through space, I was moving through dimensions, through states of being. It felt like a cosmic birth canal, propelling my consciousness from the darkness of non-physical existence towards a new form of awareness. Reflecting on it now, the tunnel felt like a necessary transition. The void was the shedding, the letting go of the physical and the immediate earthly concerns. The tunnel was the acceleration, the propulsion towards the next stage. It was a passage designed for consciousness, a rapid transit system for the soul. As the light grew to fill my view, the swirling colors of the tunnel walls became less distinct, subsumed by the overwhelming brilliance ahead. The hum reached a crescendo, a silent song of welcome that resonated with the deepest parts of my being. Every atom of my non-physical self seemed to vibrate in perfect synchronicity with this divine frequency. There was no sense of effort required to reach the light. I was simply drawn, like a moth to a flame. But this flame promised only warmth, love, and revelation. The fear I had felt in the darkness was replaced by an overwhelming sense of awe and anticipation. What was this light? Who or what resided within it? As I neared the end of the tunnel, the speed seemed to reach its peak before a gentle deceleration. It wasn't a sudden stop, but a smooth merging. The boundary between the end of the tunnel and the light dissolved. There was no barrier, just a transition from the contained energy of the passage into the boundless energy of the light. In those final moments within the tunnel, just before merging, I had a fleeting sense of everything falling into place. All the confusion of my life, all the unanswered questions, seemed on the verge of being understood. The journey through the darkness and the tunnel felt like a process of purification, stripping away the ego, the earthly concerns, leaving only the essential core of my being ready to meet whatever lay within the light. The colors of the tunnel walls, though fading, left an imprint on my awareness. They weren't just visual, they were emotional, conveying feelings of peace, joy, and boundless energy. It was a visual language of existence, showing me that reality was far more vibrant and multidimensional than I had ever conceived. And then, I was no longer in the tunnel. I was in the light. The transition was instantaneous and profound. The speed vanished. The walls dissolved. And I was immersed in the most brilliant, most loving, most powerful presence imaginable. The hum was no longer something I heard or felt. It was something I was. It was the end of the passage. The end of the acceleration, the end of the tunnel of vibrant energy. I had arrived at the source of the hum, at the destination hinted at in the deepest darkness, at the place where the 3:33 a.m. journey had been leading me all along. I was about to meet the light head-on. Being in the light was not like standing before a light source. It was like being the light source. Or rather, being completely dissolved within it. The brilliance was infinite, beyond anything the human eye could perceive. Yet it didn't hurt. There were no rays, no glare, just pure, incandescent presence. It filled everything, and I was part of everything. The warmth I had sensed from afar was amplified a millionfold here. It wasn't the warmth of fire or sunlight. but a spiritual warmth that penetrated every layer of my being, down to the very essence of my consciousness. It was the warmth of absolute belonging, of finally being home after an eternity of searching. And the feeling was what defined the light. It was love, not the conditional, often messy love we experience on Earth, filtered through human egos and expectations. This was pure, unadulterated, infinite, unconditional love. It poured into me, through me, surrounding me, dissolving every fear, every doubt, every pain I had ever known. It was a love that knew me completely, my flaws, my mistakes, my regrets, everything, and accepted me utterly, without reservation or requirement. There was no judgment in the light. None. The concept of being judged, which had lingered in my mind even in the dark void, simply ceased to exist here. The light wasn't evaluating my life, it was simply knowing it. And in that knowing, there was only perfect understanding and acceptance. Every wrong turn I had taken, every harsh word I had spoken, every opportunity I had missed, the light saw it all. And the message wasn't condemnation, but a gentle, profound comprehension of the complex tapestry of human existence and the struggles inherent within it. Communication here was not through words. It was telepathic. Yes, but even more fundamental than that. It was a direct transfer of knowledge, feeling, and understanding, happening instantaneously and simultaneously on multiple levels. The light spoke to me, not with a voice, but with pure consciousness, a flow of information and feeling that bypassed language entirely. And I spoke back the same way, my thoughts and feelings dissolving into the larger consciousness of the light. The message was clear, pervasive. You are loved. You have always been loved. You will always be loved. You are part of this. You are home. It wasn't just words, it was a fundamental truth that resonated with the deepest core of my being. It felt like waking up from a long, difficult dream and remembering a reality far more profound and beautiful than I could have imagined. The pain of leaving my body, the fear in the darkness, it all seemed like a distant, necessary prelude to this moment of absolute immersion in love. The light felt like the source of everything, the source of consciousness, of energy, of creation itself. It felt like the face of the divine, or perhaps the collective consciousness of all existence. It was immense, beyond comprehension, yet it felt intimately personal, focused entirely on me in that moment, showering me with its boundless love. In its presence, my sense of self expanded and contracted simultaneously. I was still me, the consciousness that had left my body at 3:33 a.m., with all my memories and experiences. But I was also more than that. I felt connected to everything, to every other being that had ever existed, to the universe itself. The boundaries of my individual ego dissolved, and I became part of something infinitely larger, while somehow retaining my unique spark. Tears welled up in my non-existent eyes, not of sadness, but of overwhelming relief, gratitude, and a joy so pure and intense it was almost unbearable. To be known so completely, accepted so fully, and loved so unconditionally. It was the healing balm for every wound, every insecurity, every loneliness I had ever felt in my earthly life. I understood, on a level deeper than intellect, that this love was the fundamental nature of reality. It wasn't something earned, or deserved, or given based on merit. It simply was. It was the fabric of existence, the energy that bound everything together. And realizing this changed everything about my perception of life, death, and the universe. The light communicated lessons, not through lectures, but through direct infusions of understanding. I understood the importance of love, not just receiving it, but giving it. I understood that every interaction, every relationship, was an opportunity to express this fundamental energy of love. I understood that the struggles and difficulties of life were not punishments, but opportunities for growth, for learning, for the soul's evolution. I saw my life again, briefly, not as a linear sequence, but as a complex pattern of energy exchanges. And this time, I saw it through the eyes of the light, through the lens of unconditional love. Actions I had regretted were seen not as failures, but as steps in a learning process. Moments of kindness I had forgotten shone brightly within the tapestry. The presence of the light was so profoundly peaceful, so utterly joyful, that the thought of ever leaving it seemed impossible, unbearable. Why would anyone want to return to the struggles, the pain, the limitations of earthly life after experiencing this? Here, there was only perfection, only peace, only love. I felt a sense of belonging that transcended any earthly connection. This was my true home, the source from which my consciousness had originated and to which it had now returned. The hum of the tunnel was here too, but it was no longer a distinct sound. It was the very vibration of the light itself, the resonance of divine love in the presence of the light. The concept of time vanished entirely. There was only now, an eternal present moment filled with blissful awareness and infinite love. I could have stayed there forever, dissolved in that glorious presence, perfectly content. But even within the boundless peace, there was a gentle knowing, a quiet communication that this wasn't the final destination for me. Not yet. There was more to experience, more to learn. Back in the world I had left, the message wasn't a command, but a truth presented with infinite gentleness. My journey, which began with the chilling moment at 3:33 a.m., was not complete. The light, while welcoming and infinitely loving, held within it the vast knowledge of my path, past, present, and future. It knew I had a reason to return, a purpose yet unfulfilled. And as this understanding settled upon me, the intensity of the love didn't lessen, but it shifted, preparing me gently for the next stage. I wasn't being pushed away, but being lovingly guided towards what needed to come next, within the boundless expanse of the light, which felt like the very fabric of existence woven from pure love and consciousness. The presence I had been communicating with began to take on a more defined though still non-physical, form. It wasn't a single shape, but a focal point within the light, a denser concentration of brilliance and energy. And then more appeared, not separating from the main light, but emerging within it, like currents in a vast ocean of luminescence. They were beings of light. They didn't have bodies like ours, no limbs or faces as we understand them. They were pure consciousness manifested as intensely radiant light. Each had a distinct energy signature, a unique vibration within the symphony of the light. Yet they were also perfectly unified, seemingly part of a collective awareness centered in the core light itself. Some felt ancient and wise, others younger, more vibrant, but all radiated the same profound, unconditional love as the light they were part of. Communication was effortless and instantaneous. It was pure telepathy, mind to mind, or perhaps soul to soul. There was no need for language. Thoughts, questions, understandings, and feelings were exchanged instantly. A flow of information and connection that was more efficient and complete than any earthly conversation. It was like plugging directly into a universal network of knowing. They greeted me not with words, but with an overwhelming wave of love and welcome that felt deeply personal, like being embraced by beings who had known and loved me for eternity. There was no need for introductions. They knew who I was. Not just my name or my life story, but my true essence, the unique spark of consciousness that I represented. The purpose of their presence felt multifaceted. They were guides, teachers, and companions in this realm. They weren't there to judge or command, but to facilitate understanding and integration. They showed me aspects of myself, my journey, and the nature of reality with a clarity that was astounding. One of the beings, which felt perhaps the most ancient and central, communicated directly with my core consciousness. It felt like the most loving parent, the wisest mentor, and the most accepting friend all rolled into one. Its communication wasn't linear, it was a cascade of insights, images, and feelings. Through this telepathic exchange, I began to understand more about the 3:33 a.m. timestamp. It wasn't random. It felt like a resonant frequency, a specific point in the energetic flow of the universe when the veil between dimensions is naturally thinner, making passage possible. It was the cosmic alignment that coincided with the perfect moment for my consciousness to transition. The beings didn't explain it in scientific terms, but I understood it intuitively. A feeling of synchronicity and cosmic timing. They showed me glimpses of the journey I had just undertaken. They didn't dwell on the darkness or the fear, but acknowledged them as necessary steps in the process of shedding the physical and the ego. The tunnel was explained not just as a passage, but as a cleansing and accelerating mechanism, preparing my consciousness for the higher vibrations of the light. A significant part of the interaction was a review, not of my actions in a judgmental way, but of the energy I had created and the lessons I had learned throughout my life. The light beings guided me through a rapid, multi-dimensional review of key moments, allowing me to see them not just from my perspective, but from the perspectives of everyone involved. This was where the true lessons came. seeing the impact of my words and actions, feeling the pain I had caused in others even unintentionally, and the joy I had brought, but experiencing it all through the filter of the light's unconditional love. It wasn't about blame, it was about understanding consequence, about the interconnectedness of all beings, and the power of compassion and empathy. They communicated that the most important currency in existence was love and the energy of intention. Our thoughts and feelings created vibrations that impacted not just ourselves, but the entire universal field of consciousness. Kindness, forgiveness, and unconditional love were the highest vibrations, creating harmony and expansion. Fear, anger, and judgment created lower, denser vibrations, causing disharmony and contraction. The light beings conveyed that earthly life was a precious opportunity for soul growth. The challenges were not punishments, but carefully chosen lessons designed to help us learn and evolve. They showed me that every soul has a unique purpose, a contribution to make to the greater cosmic tapestry. My purpose was still unfolding, not yet complete. There was a profound sense of humility in their presence. They were infinitely wiser, more evolved, yet they treated me as an equal, a fellow spark of the divine, temporarily veiled by earthly existence. They didn't lecture or preach, they simply were, and their being was a teaching in itself, a living demonstration of pure love, wisdom, and interconnectedness. They answered questions I didn't even know I had, clarifying confusions that had plagued me throughout my life. They showed me the bigger picture, how my life fit into a larger cosmic plan, how seemingly random events were often intricately connected by unseen threads of cause and effect, influenced by choices made not just in this life, but potentially others. The concept of time felt even more fluid here. Past, present, and future seemed to exist simultaneously, accessible in moments. The light beings could guide my awareness to any point in my life, or even glimpses of potential futures, though the future was presented not as fixed destiny, but as probabilities shaped by free will. Interacting with the light beings was an experience of pure beingness. There was no need for pretense, no hiding. They saw my soul in its naked truth, and they loved it anyway. This level of acceptance was incredibly liberating and healing. It dissolved lifetimes of accumulated shame and self-doubt. They showed me that the longing for connection, for purpose, for love, that we feel on earth is actually a yearning for this state of being, for reconnection with the source and with our true spiritual family. The love we seek in human relationships is a faint echo of the boundless love that is our true nature and our ultimate destination. The beings radiated patience and gentle guidance. They knew I couldn't stay here forever, and they began to prepare me for the inevitable return. They didn't push, but subtly shifted the focus of our interaction towards the lessons I needed to carry back. The purpose that awaited me, as the interaction deepened, the distinction between me and them and the core light itself began to blur again. We were all aspects of the same thing, different notes in the same divine symphony. The individual consciousness that had left my body at 3:33 a.m. was merging back into the collective, enriched by the experience, but retaining its unique identity. They didn't give me a list of commandments or a religious doctrine. Their message was universal, transcending any particular earthly faith. It was about the fundamental truths of love, consciousness, interconnectedness, and growth. It was about the journey of the soul, in the heart of the light, communing with these radiant beings. I understood that death was not an ending, but a transition. It was a return to our true home, a shedding of the physical vessel, and a continuation of the soul's eternal journey. And the chilling moment at 3:33 was not a tragedy, but simply the timestamp of my initiation into this profound reality. As the gentle prompting to consider returning grew stronger, the intensity of the direct communication from the beings began to soften. Though their loving presence remained absolute, they had shown me what I needed to see, conveyed the crucial lessons, and prepared me for the next phase of my journey. As my communion with the light beings reached a certain point, the focus of the experience shifted. It wasn't a conscious decision on my part, but a gentle redirection guided by the overwhelming consciousness of the light. The boundless expanse around me didn't disappear, but it became the backdrop for something incredibly intense and personal. The panoramic review of my entire life. It wasn't like watching a movie on a screen, it was holographic, immersive, and happening all around me simultaneously. Imagine every moment you have ever lived, every thought you have ever had, every word you have ever spoken, every action you have ever taken. Suddenly present, vivid, and real in 3 dimensions. It was overwhelming, beautiful, and terrifying all at once. Time collapsed, and my life unfolded not in sequence, but as a complete, interconnected whole. But the most profound aspect wasn't just seeing my life from my own eyes again. The light beings, or perhaps the light itself, facilitated the experience of seeing and feeling every moment from the perspective of others involved. I became the people I had interacted with, feeling their emotions, understanding their motivations, experiencing the impact of my presence in their lives directly. When I saw a moment where I had been impatient or unkind, I didn't just see my action, I was the person on the receiving end, feeling the sting of the words, the disappointment, the hurt. The casual remark I'd forgotten minutes after saying it was relived from the perspective of someone it had deeply affected. The moments of anger or frustration I'd unleashed were experienced from the viewpoint of those who had to absorb that negative energy. It wasn't just seeing their reaction, it was being there through their reaction, feeling their fear, their sadness, their confusion. Conversely, moments of kindness, compassion, or simple presence that I might have dismissed as insignificant shone brightly. When I saw myself offering a helping hand, listening patiently, or simply sharing a genuine smile, I relived the moment from the other person's side, feeling the warmth of connection, the relief, the unexpected joy my small action had brought them. A forgotten compliment was felt as a boost to someone's self-esteem. A moment of shared laughter was experienced as a pure exchange of positive energy. This wasn't a judgmental review. There was no external voice saying you were bad here or you were good there. The judgment was inherent in the experience itself, felt directly through the shared emotions. The light and the beings were there not as judges, but as facilitators of understanding. They allowed me to see the intricate web of cause and effect woven by my life, showing how my energy had flowed out into the world and impacted the energy of others. The speed of the review was incredible. It wasn't linear like a tape recording. It felt more like accessing a massive, interconnected database of my existence. Key moments, significant interactions, and recurring patterns would surface, highlighted by the light beings, allowing me to understand the underlying lessons and implications. I saw the opportunities I had missed to connect, to forgive, to love more fully. I saw how my own fears and insecurities had often prevented me from being truly present for others. I also saw moments of courage, resilience, and genuine love that I had perhaps undervalued in my earthly life. The emotional intensity was staggering. Reliving the pain I had caused was a profound lesson in empathy. It wasn't just intellectual understanding, it was feeling the hurt in my core, experiencing the ripple effect of my negative energy. It brought a deep sense of remorse, not guilt, but a heartfelt sorrow for the pain I had inadvertently contributed to the world. Equally intense were the moments of love and connection, feeling the joy I had brought, the comfort I had provided, the love I had shared and received was incredibly uplifting and validating. It underscored the teaching of the light beings, that love was the most powerful force, the energy that truly mattered. The life review emphasized relationships. It showed me that our interactions with each other are perhaps the most significant aspect of our earthly journey. How we treat each other, the energy we exchange, is what truly shapes our soul's evolution and contributes to the collective consciousness. It was clear that the small, seemingly insignificant acts of kindness often had the most powerful and lasting positive impact. A moment of genuine listening, a word of encouragement, a simple act of generosity, these resonated with a pure, high vibration that spread outwards. Conversely, moments of judgment, gossip, or neglect created dense, low vibrations that cause pain and disharmony. I saw how holding on to resentment or unforgiveness harmed not just me, but also created a negative energy field around me that affected those nearby. The life review was like a cosmic feedback loop. It showed me my energetic footprint on the world, unfiltered and complete. It was the ultimate accountability, not based on rules or commandments, but on the fundamental principle of energy exchange and interconnectedness. The light beings remained present throughout the review, their loving energy surrounding me, supporting me through the more difficult moments of seeing the pain I had caused. They didn't condemn, but their presence amplified the lessons, ensuring I understood the true weight of my actions and intentions. It was an experience of radical honesty. I saw myself completely, without the filters of ego, self-justification, or denial. I saw my true motivations, my hidden fears, my authentic moments of love. It was stripping away all pretense and seeing the raw, unedited version of my soul's journey through that lifetime. And it became clear that the time of my death at 3:33 a.m. was simply the endpoint of that particular chapter. The moment when the book of that life was closed and presented for review. It wasn't a punishment or a random event, but the precise timing for the soul's transition and evaluation. As the intensity of the panoramic review began to subside, the individual moments dissolving back into the overall tapestry, I was left with a profound sense of understanding of myself, of others, and of the intricate dance of life. The lessons were seared into my consciousness, not just intellectually, but experientially. I had lived the impact of my life through the hearts and minds of those I had touched. This review was the preparation. It showed me what mattered and what didn't. It highlighted the areas where I needed to grow, the lessons I still needed to learn. It was the curriculum review before being sent back to continue my studies. The overwhelming love of the light remained, but it was now accompanied by the weight of this profound understanding of my life's energetic impact. Within the boundless expanse of the light, which felt like the very fabric of existence woven from pure love and consciousness, the presence I had been communicating with began to take on a more defined, though still non-physical, form. It wasn't a single shape, but a focal point within the light, a denser concentration of brilliance and energy. And then, more appeared, not separating from the main light, but emerging within it, like currents in a vast ocean of luminescence. They were beings of light. They didn't have bodies like ours, no limbs or faces as we understand them. They were pure consciousness manifested as intensely radiant light. Each had a distinct energy signature, a unique vibration within the symphony of the light. Yet they were also perfectly unified, seemingly part of a collective awareness centered in the core light itself. Some felt ancient and wise, others younger, more vibrant, but all radiated the same profound, unconditional love as the light they were part of. Communication was effortless and instantaneous. It was pure telepathy, mind to mind, or perhaps soul to soul. There was no need for language. Thoughts, questions, understandings, and feelings were exchanged instantly. A flow of information and connection that was more efficient and complete than any earthly conversation. It was like plugging directly into a universal network of knowing. They greeted me not with words, but with an overwhelming wave of love and welcome that felt deeply personal, like being embraced by beings who had known and loved me for eternity. There was no need for introductions. They knew who I was. Not just my name or my life story, but my true essence, the unique spark of consciousness that I represented. The purpose of their presence felt multifaceted. They were guides, teachers, and companions in this realm. They weren't there to judge or command, but to facilitate understanding and integration. They showed me aspects of myself, my journey, and the nature of reality with a clarity that was astounding. One of the beings, which felt perhaps the most ancient and central, communicated directly with my core consciousness. It felt like the most loving parent, the wisest mentor, and the most accepting friend all rolled into one. Its communication wasn't linear. It was a cascade of insights, images, and feelings. Through this telepathic exchange, I began to understand more about the 3:33 a.m. timestamp. It wasn't random. It felt like a resonant frequency, a specific point in the energetic flow of the universe when the veil between dimensions is naturally thinner, making passage possible. It was the cosmic alignment that coincided with the perfect moment for my consciousness to transition. The beings didn't explain it in scientific terms, but I understood it intuitively. A feeling of synchronicity and cosmic timing. They showed me glimpses of the journey I had just undertaken. They didn't dwell on the darkness or the fear, but acknowledged them as necessary steps in the process of shedding the physical and the ego. The tunnel was explained not just as a passage, but as a cleansing and accelerating mechanism, preparing my consciousness for the higher vibrations of the light. A significant part of the interaction was a review, not of my actions in a judgmental way, but of the energy I had created and the lessons I had learned throughout my life. The light beings guided me through a rapid, multi-dimensional review of key moments, allowing me to see them not just from my perspective, but from the perspectives of everyone involved. This was where the true lessons came. Seeing the impact of my words and actions, feeling the pain I had caused in others, even unintentionally, and the joy I had brought, but experiencing it all through the filter of the light's unconditional love. It wasn't about blame, it was about understanding consequence, about the interconnectedness of all beings, and the power of compassion and empathy. They communicated that the most important currency in existence was love and the energy of intention. Our thoughts and feelings created vibrations that impacted not just ourselves, but the entire universal field of consciousness. Kindness, forgiveness, and unconditional love were the highest vibrations, creating harmony and expansion. Fear, anger, and judgment created lower, denser vibrations, causing disharmony and contraction. The light beings conveyed that earthly life was a precious opportunity for soul growth. The challenges were not punishments, but carefully chosen lessons designed to help us learn and evolve. They showed me that every soul has a unique purpose, a contribution to make to the greater cosmic tapestry. My purpose was still unfolding, not yet complete. There was a profound sense of humility in their presence. They were infinitely wiser, more evolved, yet they treated me as an equal, a fellow spark of the divine, temporarily veiled by earthly existence. They didn't lecture or preach, they simply were. And their being was a teaching in itself, a living demonstration of pure love, wisdom, and interconnectedness. They answered questions I didn't even know I had, clarifying confusions that had plagued me throughout my life. They showed me the bigger picture, how my life fit into a larger cosmic plan, how seemingly random events were often intricately connected by unseen threads of cause and effect, influenced by choices made not just in this life, but potentially others. The concept of time felt even more fluid here. Past, present, and future seemed to exist simultaneously, accessible in moments. The light beings could guide my awareness to any point in my life, or even glimpses of potential futures, though the future was presented not as fixed destiny, but as probabilities shaped by free will. Interacting with the light beings was an experience of pure beingness. There was no need for pretense, no hiding. They saw my soul in its naked truth, and they loved it anyway. This level of acceptance was incredibly liberating and healing. It dissolved lifetimes of accumulated shame and self-doubt. They showed me that the longing for connection, for purpose, for love, that we feel on earth is actually a yearning for this state of being, for reconnection with the source and with our true spiritual family. The love we seek in human relationships is a faint echo of the boundless love that is our true nature and our ultimate destination. The beings radiated patience and gentle guidance. They knew I couldn't stay here forever, and they began to prepare me for the inevitable return. They didn't push, but subtly shifted the focus of our interaction towards the lessons I needed to carry back. The purpose that awaited me. As the interaction deepened, the distinction between me and them and the core light itself began to blur again. We were all aspects of the same thing, different notes in the same divine symphony. The individual consciousness that had left my body at 3:33 a.m. was merging back into the collective, enriched by the experience, but retaining its unique identity. They didn't give me a list of commandments or a religious doctrine. Their message was universal, transcending any particular earthly faith. It was about the fundamental truths of love, consciousness, interconnectedness, and growth. It was about the journey of the soul in the heart of the light, communing with these radiant beings. I understood that death was not an ending, but a transition. It was a return to our true home, a shedding of the physical vessel, and a continuation of the soul's eternal journey. And the chilling moment at 3:33 a.m. was not a tragedy, but simply the timestamp of my initiation into this profound reality. As the gentle prompting to consider returning grew stronger, the intensity of the direct communication from the beings began to soften. Though their loving presence remained absolute, they had shown me what I needed to see, conveyed the crucial lessons, and prepared me for the next phase of my journey. As my communion with the light beings reached a certain point, the focus of the experience shifted. It wasn't a conscious decision on my part, but a gentle redirection guided by the overwhelming consciousness of the light. The boundless expanse around me didn't disappear, but it became the backdrop for something incredibly intense and personal. The panoramic review of my entire life. It wasn't like watching a movie on a screen, it was holographic, immersive, and happening all around me simultaneously. Imagine every moment you have ever lived, every thought you have ever had, every word you have ever spoken, every action you have ever taken, suddenly present, vivid, and real in 3 dimensions. It was overwhelming, beautiful, and terrifying all at once. Time collapsed, and my life unfolded not in sequence, but as a complete, interconnected whole. But the most profound aspect wasn't just seeing my life from my own eyes again. The light beings, or perhaps the light itself, facilitated the experience of seeing and feeling every moment from the perspective of others involved. I became the people I had interacted with, feeling their emotions, understanding their motivations, experiencing the impact of my presence in their lives directly. When I saw a moment where I had been impatient or unkind, I didn't just see my action, I was the person on the receiving end, feeling the sting of the words, the disappointment, the hurt. The casual remark I'd forgotten minutes after saying it was relived from the perspective of someone it had deeply affected. The moments of anger or frustration I'd unleashed were experienced from the viewpoint of those who had to absorb that negative energy. It wasn't just seeing their reaction, it was being their reaction. Feeling their fear, their sadness, their confusion. Conversely, moments of kindness, compassion, or simple presence that I might have dismissed as insignificant shone brightly. When I saw myself offering a helping hand, listening patiently, or simply sharing a genuine smile, I relived the moment from the other person's side, feeling the warmth of connection, the relief, the unexpected joy my small action had brought them. A forgotten compliment was felt as a boost to someone's self-esteem. A moment of shared laughter was experienced as a pure exchange of positive energy. This wasn't a judgmental review. There was no external voice saying, "You were bad here" or "You were good there." The judgment was inherent in the experience itself, felt directly through the shared emotions. The light and the beings were there not as judges, but as facilitators of understanding. They allowed me to see the intricate web of cause and effect woven by my life, showing how my energy had flowed out into the world and impacted the energy of others. The speed of the review was incredible. It wasn't linear like a tape recording. It felt more like accessing a massive, interconnected database of my existence. Key moments, significant interactions, and recurring patterns would surface, highlighted by the light beings, allowing me to understand the underlying lessons and implications. I saw the opportunities I had missed to connect, to forgive, to love more fully. I saw how my own fears and insecurities had often prevented me from being truly present for others. I also saw moments of courage, resilience, and genuine love that I had perhaps undervalued in my earthly life. The emotional intensity was staggering. Reliving the pain I had caused was a profound lesson in empathy. It wasn't just intellectual understanding, it was feeling the hurt in my core, experiencing the ripple effect of my negative energy. It brought a deep sense of remorse, not guilt, but a heartfelt sorrow for the pain I had inadvertently contributed to the world. Equally intense were the moments of love and connection, feeling the joy I had brought, the comfort I had provided, the love I had shared and received was incredibly uplifting and validating. It underscored the teaching of the light beings, that love was the most powerful force, the energy that truly mattered. The life review emphasized relationships. It showed me that our interactions with each other are perhaps the most significant aspect of our earthly journey. How we treat each other, the energy we exchange, is what truly shapes our soul's evolution and contributes to the collective consciousness. It was clear that the small, seemingly insignificant acts of kindness often had the most powerful and lasting positive impact. A moment of genuine listening, a word of encouragement, a simple act of generosity, these resonated with a pure, high vibration that spread outwards. Conversely, moments of judgment, gossip, or neglect created dense, low vibrations that cause pain and disharmony. I saw how holding on to resentment or unforgiveness harmed not just me, but also created a negative energy field around me that affected those nearby. The life review was like a cosmic feedback loop. It showed me my energetic footprint on the world, unfiltered and complete. It was the ultimate accountability, not based on rules or commandments, but on the fundamental principle of energy exchange and interconnectedness. The light beings remained present throughout the review, their loving energy surrounding me, supporting me through the more difficult moments of seeing the pain I had caused. They didn't condemn, but their presence amplified the lessons, ensuring I understood the true weight of my actions and intentions. It was an experience of radical honesty. I saw myself completely, without the filters of ego, self-justification, or denial. I saw my true motivations, my hidden fears, my authentic moments of love. It was stripping away all pretense and seeing the raw, unedited version of my soul's journey through that lifetime. And it became clear that the time of my death at 3:33 a.m. was simply the endpoint of that particular chapter. The moment when the book of that life was closed and presented for review. It wasn't a punishment or a random event, but the precise timing for the soul's transition and evaluation. As the intensity of the panoramic review began to subside, the individual moments dissolving back into the overall tapestry, I was left with a profound sense of understanding of myself, of others, and of the intricate dance of life. The lessons were seared into my consciousness, not just intellectually, but experientially. I had lived the impact of my life through the hearts and minds of those I had touched. This review was the preparation. It showed me what mattered and what didn't. It highlighted the areas where I needed to grow, the lessons I still needed to learn. It was the curriculum review before being sent back to continue my studies. The overwhelming love of the light remained, but it was now accompanied by the weight of this profound understanding of my life's energetic impact. So, to continue. Hiện tiến trình tư duy. Continuing the narrative. As the vivid, multi-dimensional panorama of my life receded, dissolving back into the surrounding brilliance of the light, I was left not with images, but with pure knowing. The life review was not just a playback, it was a download of profound understanding, a recalibration of my entire perspective on existence. The lessons weren't intellectual concepts to be pondered. They were truths woven into the very fabric of my consciousness by the powerful energy of the light and the guidance of the beings. The most overwhelming lesson, the core truth that pulsed at the heart of everything I had experienced, was the absolute primacy of love. Not romantic love, or familial love, or any of the specific, often conditional forms of love we know on earth. This was the universal, unconditional love of the light, the fundamental creative force of the universe. I understood, with every fiber of my being, that this love was the answer to every question, the solution to every problem, the ultimate reality. Our purpose in life, I realized, was to learn to align ourselves with this love, to express it in every interaction, to be love in action. The life review had shown me that every time I chose love, kindness, compassion, forgiveness, patience, I was aligning with this fundamental truth, and the positive impact resonated outwards. Forgiveness was another monumental lesson, seeing the pain I had caused, and feeling the pain others had caused me. from a perspective of total understanding and empathy within the light. Dissolved all lingering resentment and blame. I understood that hurting others often stemmed from their own pain, their own lack of understanding or connection to the light's love. Forgiveness wasn't about condoning harmful behavior. It was about releasing the dense, negative energy of anger and resentment that harmed only myself and created barriers between souls. It was also profoundly clear that self-forgiveness was just as crucial. Seeing my own mistakes and shortcomings through the eyes of the light's unconditional acceptance taught me to let go of self-judgment and embrace self-compassion as a necessary part of growth. My understanding of purpose completely shifted. It wasn't about achieving fame, accumulating wealth, or reaching specific earthly milestones. True purpose, as shown by the light beings in the review, was about soul growth and contribution to the collective consciousness. It was about the lessons learned, the love shared, the empathy cultivated. Every interaction, every challenge, every relationship was an opportunity to learn, to love, to expand my awareness, and to contribute positive energy to the universe. My specific talents and interests were simply the unique tools given to me to fulfill this overarching purpose of growth and contribution. The 3:33 a.m. timestamp felt less like the end of a specific life and more like a pause point for evaluation and redirection towards the continued fulfillment of this greater soul purpose. Empathy was no longer an abstract concept. It was an experiential reality. Having felt the emotions of others as my own during the life review permanently altered my understanding of interconnectedness. We are not isolated islands. We are intricately woven into a single tapestry of consciousness. The pain of one affects the whole, and the joy of one elevates the whole. This understanding brought with it a profound sense of responsibility, the responsibility to be mindful of the energy I put out into the world, knowing its ripple effect. The lessons about consequences were equally transformative. It wasn't about punishment for sins, but about the undeniable law of cause and effect. Seen on an energetic level, negative actions created negative energy that ultimately circled back. Positive actions created positive energy that expanded and uplifted. It was a simple, elegant system of universal balance, driven by intention and energy. The importance of intention became crystal clear. It was the energetic seed from which actions grew. The value of simple human interactions was highlighted repeatedly. A genuine smile, a listening ear, a shared moment of vulnerability. These often carried more weight and had a more lasting positive impact than grand gestures. The mundane moments of life were revealed to be the fertile ground for cultivating love, empathy, and connection. These lessons weren't just theoretical. They were accompanied by a visceral sense of recognition, a feeling that this was knowledge I had always possessed on a deeper level, but had forgotten or ignored during my earthly life. It felt like remembering a fundamental truth about reality that had been obscured by the density and distractions of the physical world. My feelings upon integrating these lessons were complex but ultimately centered on gratitude. Gratitude for the opportunity to see these truths, for the chance to understand where I had veered off course, and for the overwhelming love that made this understanding possible without shame or condemnation. There was a sense of deep humility, recognizing how much more there was to learn and how far I still had to go in truly embodying the principles of love and forgiveness. There was also a powerful sense of clarity about what truly matters. The material possessions, the status, the fleeting achievements that often consumed my focus on earth seemed utterly trivial from this perspective. What mattered were the connections forged, the love shared, the lessons learned, and the positive energy contributed to the collective. The light beings, though less actively communicating now that the primary lessons were integrated, continued to surround me with their loving presence. They felt like silent witnesses, allowing me the space to process these profound revelations. I reflected on what it would mean to carry these lessons back into my physical life. How would I navigate the world, with its inherent challenges and imperfections, while holding on to these truths? The prospect felt daunting, yet also filled with a renewed sense of purpose. If I were to return, my mission would be clear: to live from this place of understanding, to choose love and forgiveness, to cultivate empathy, and to be mindful of the energy I created. The overwhelming peace and joy of being in the light remained, but it was now tinged with the knowledge of the work that lay ahead if I were to go back. The lessons weren't just for my own understanding, they were meant to be lived, to be embodied, to be shared. The life review and the insights gained from the light beings were not the end of the journey, but the essential preparation for the path yet to be walked within the radiant expanse of the light. After the intense integration of the life review's lessons had settled, the environment around me subtly shifted again. It wasn't a change in the quality of the light or the feeling of unconditional love, but rather, new focal points of energy began to emerge within the brilliance. These weren't the ancient, wise light beings who had guided my understanding. Though their loving presence still permeated everything, these new presences felt familiar, and then I recognized them. They weren't in their earthly bodies, marked by age or illness. They appeared as vibrant, radiant versions of themselves, radiating a pure, clear light from within. My grandmother was there, looking younger and healthier than I'd ever known her in my adult life, her smile radiating pure warmth. My grandfather, who had passed years before, stood beside her, his eyes twinkling with the same gentle humor I remembered. Other family members, some I hadn't even thought of in years, were there too, and friends who had passed on. The reunion wasn't marked by shouting or physical embraces as we know them. It was a merging of consciousness, a flood of recognition and overwhelming love that passed between us instantly and telepathically. It felt like our souls recognizing each other, shedding the limitations of physical form and earthly communication. There was no need for words like hello or I missed you. The message was simply, I know you, I love you, I am here. The love they radiated was different from the boundless, universal love of the core light. It was that same pure, unconditional love, but filtered through the unique, familiar energy of our shared history and connection. It was the love of family, of friendship, of deep, enduring bonds, now purified and intensified by being in the light. Seeing them was incredibly comforting. In the vastness of this non-physical realm, encountering these familiar beacons of light grounded me. reminding me of the love that extended beyond the physical world. They looked happy, serene, radiating peace and contentment. There was no trace of the suffering or struggles they had endured in life. They were simply existing in a state of pure joy and love within the light. Communication was effortless. We exchanged lifetimes of unspoken feelings and understandings in mere moments. They knew everything I had just experienced: the dark void, the tunnel, the immersion in the light, the life review. They didn't need me to explain, they simply knew. Because in this realm, consciousness is shared. They communicated their love and pride, not for any earthly achievements, but for the journey of my soul. They reassured me that they had been near, watching over me, even when I wasn't aware of it. Their presence felt like a confirmation that the bonds of love truly are eternal and transcend physical death. There was a sense of quiet joy and acceptance in their presence. They weren't urging me to stay or go. They were simply sharing this space of love and connection with me. They felt like part of my spiritual family, the souls I was connected to across lifetimes and dimensions. The spiritual lesson embedded in this reunion was profound. Love is the only thing that is real and eternal. It is the thread that connects us all, across time and space, across life and death. The physical form is temporary, but the energetic bond of love is permanent. It reinforced the lessons from the life review about the importance of cultivating loving relationships and cherishing the connections we have. They showed me, not with images, but with shared feeling, that they were in a state of peace and continued growth within the light. They were not waiting idly, but were engaged in their own journeys of learning and contribution within this higher realm of consciousness. Seeing them so happy and whole dissolved any lingering fear I had about death for my loved ones. I knew now that they were not gone, but had simply transitioned to a state of pure being within the loving embrace of the light. This knowledge brought an incredible sense of peace and reassurance. Our time together felt both instantaneous and eternal, in the timelessness of the light. Moments stretched into infinity, yet the communication felt so rapid and complete that it could have been mere seconds. There was a perfect balance of profound depth and effortless flow. The beings of light who had guided me through the review remained present, their energy distinct from my family's, but harmonizing with it. They felt like the hosts, the keepers of this sacred space, facilitating these reunions as part of the soul's journey of integration and understanding. As the reunion gently began to draw to a close, not with farewells, but with a gradual sense of shifting focus, I felt an even deeper connection to my earthly life. Strangely enough, seeing the faces of those I loved, knowing they were safe and loved in the light, strengthened my sense of purpose related to my life on earth. It underscored the importance of the love I had shared with them and the love I still had to share with those who remained. Their presence felt like a blessing, a confirmation that I was seen, loved, and supported from beyond the veil. It was a powerful reminder that death is not an end, but a transformation, and that love is the bridge that spans the perceived divide. The knowledge that my loved ones existed in this state of peace and light became a source of immense comfort that I knew I would carry back with me. It was a tangible piece of evidence, felt and experienced in the core of my being, that love endures and that consciousness continues. The chilling moment at 3:33 a.m., which had initiated this journey into the unknown, now felt like the doorway that had led me to this profound reunion and this undeniable truth about the eternal nature of love and connection. As the gentle energy of the reunion with my loved ones began to recede, not a departure but a broadening of focus, the environment around me expanded. I was still enveloped by the same brilliant, loving light, the source of all that was. But within this boundless luminescence, structures and landscapes began to manifest, not as solid, physical forms, but as shimmering, energetic constructs. It was a realm of unimaginable beauty. There were fields of light, not grass, but energy that swayed and pulsed with soft, vibrant colors, radiating a soothing warmth. There were crystalline structures that rose organically from the energy fields, not sharp or cold, but glowing with inner light and emitting pure, harmonious tones that added to the symphony of the light. Waterfalls of pure light flowed over impossible ledges, their luminescence creating rainbows that weren't just visual, but felt like cascades of joy and peace. The colors here were beyond description, richer, more numerous, more alive than anything I had ever seen on Earth. They pulsed with energy, each hue vibrating with a specific frequency of feeling or knowledge. Gold and silver light flowed like rivers, carrying a sense of peace and ancient wisdom. Emerald greens and sapphire blues glowed with life and vitality. Every shade was pure, radiant, and seemed to sing with the overall hum of the light. The air, though I had no lungs, felt incredibly pure and invigorating. It wasn't air as we know it, but a medium of pure energy that I existed within. Breathing wasn't necessary. Existing was effortless and deeply fulfilling. The temperature was perfect, not hot, not cold, but a state of absolute, comforting warmth that permeated my being. There were what looked like trees, but made of interwoven light, their branches reaching upwards into the infinite light above. They seemed to hum with a gentle energy, radiating life and a sense of deep-rooted peace. Beings of light, similar to the ones who had guided me but perhaps less intensely focused, moved among these landscapes, their forms fluid and graceful, adding to the overall harmony. They weren't individuals in the human sense, but aspects of the collective consciousness, exploring and interacting with the environment they were part of. The entire landscape felt alive, conscious, and interconnected. It was as if the light itself was expressing its nature through these forms. The fields, the structures, the light waterfalls, they weren't just scenery. They were manifestations of divine energy, embodiments of peace, joy, and harmony. Walking, or rather, gliding through these landscapes was effortless. My consciousness moved through the environment with perfect ease, drawn to areas of particular beauty or energetic resonance. There were no paths, yet the way forward was always clear, guided by an intuitive sense of where to go, where to experience the next wonder. The sounds were not loud or jarring, but a continuous, evolving symphony of tones and vibrations that were both heard and felt. The hum of the light was the foundation, and layered upon it were the gentle chimes of the crystalline structures, the flowing resonance of the light waterfalls, and the soft, melodic vibrations emanating from the light trees and other beings. It was a soundscape of perfect harmony, a living music that resonated with the truth of creation. There were places that felt like gardens of knowledge, where light forms pulsed with complex information I could access simply by being near them. There were areas that felt like spaces of pure creativity, where energy flowed and swirled, ready to be shaped by conscious intent. The potential of this realm seemed infinite. The sheer peace of these landscapes was profound. All earthly worries, anxieties, and stresses were completely absent. There was only a deep sense of calm, contentment, and belonging. It was a peace that came from being in perfect alignment with the fundamental nature of reality, a reality based on love, harmony, and pure energy. Comparing this realm to Earth was like comparing a vibrant, living symphony to a single, muted note. Earth had beauty, yes, but it was often fleeting, imperfect, and tinged with struggle. This realm was beauty in its purest, most concentrated form, untainted by negativity or limitation. It was a powerful spiritual lesson that the universe, at its core, is not chaotic or indifferent, but is a place of inherent beauty, order, and profound love. This realm was the blueprint, the source code, from which all physical reality was derived. But in a form of perfect energetic purity, I understood that consciousness played a role in the manifestation of these landscapes. While the core light and its fundamental principles were absolute, the specific forms and experiences within it could be influenced by collective or even individual consciousness. It was a realm of pure potential, where thought and intention could shape reality. The feeling of being part of this environment was overwhelming. I wasn't just an observer, I was participating in its existence. The energy of the light fields flowed through me. The harmony of the sounds resonated within me. The beauty of the colors was something I was. It reinforced the lesson of interconnectedness on a cosmic scale. There was a sense of timelessness in these landscapes, just as there had been in the core light. Moments stretched into eternity, allowing for complete absorption in the experience. There was no rush, no agenda, just the pure joy of existence and exploration. I could have wandered these landscapes forever, discovering new wonders, immersing myself in the profound peace and beauty. It was a realm of infinite possibility, limited only by consciousness itself. However, even in this state of blissful immersion, the gentle sense of a different path, a return journey, began to reassert itself. The beauty of this realm wasn't meant to be a permanent escape, but a revelation, a glimpse of the potential that exists beyond the physical, a truth to carry back. The chilling moment at 3:33 a.m. had opened the door not just to the void and the light, but to this breathtaking vista of spiritual reality, showing me the true nature of the home my soul yearned for. Amidst the breathtaking beauty of the light realm's energetic landscapes, while still feeling the resonance of my reunion with loved ones and the deep integration of the Life Review's lessons, my consciousness expanded further. It wasn't a physical sensation, but a sudden, profound opening of my awareness. It felt like a filter had been removed, and I was suddenly tapped into a vast reservoir of information, a universal library of knowledge. Accessing this knowledge wasn't like reading books or listening to lectures. It was instantaneous and holographic. Concepts, truths, and complex understandings were simply present in my consciousness, complete and fully formed, as if they had always been there, waiting to be remembered. It was pure knowing, bypassing the need for language or logical deduction. I understood the fundamental nature of energy, how everything in the universe, from the smallest particle to the largest galaxy, was composed of vibrating energy, and how consciousness was the organizing principle of this energy. I saw how thoughts and emotions weren't just internal states, but energetic frequencies that interacted with and influenced the universal field. The lessons from the Life Review about the impact of my energy on others made perfect sense now, seen through the lens of this universal understanding. I gained insight into the structure of the cosmos, not just physically, but dimensionally. I saw that reality wasn't limited to the 3 or 4 dimensions we perceive on Earth, but was multi-layered, with different realms and states of consciousness existing simultaneously at different vibrational frequencies. The dark void, the tunnel, the light realm, they were just different points or phases within this larger, multi-dimensional reality. The nature of time became clear. It wasn't a linear progression, but a construct, a way for consciousness to experience existence sequentially within certain dimensions. In the higher realms, past, present, and future existed concurrently, accessible as aspects of an eternal now. This understanding dissolved many of my earthly anxieties about the future and regrets about the past. I understood the cycles of life and death not as beginnings and endings, but as transitions within an ongoing process of soul evolution. Consciousness is eternal, simply changing form and experiencing different states of being. Death was simply shedding a temporary vessel to continue the journey in a non-physical form. The chilling moment at 3:33 a.m. was merely the timestamp of one such transition point in my soul's infinite journey. I grasped the concept of interconnectedness on a cosmic scale. Not just human to human, but everything to everything. Consciousness, energy, matter, dimensions. We are all facets of the same universal consciousness, like individual waves in an infinite ocean. Hurting another was literally hurting a part of oneself, and loving another was loving a part of the universal whole. This deepened the lessons from the Life Review immensely. Complex philosophical and scientific questions that had baffled humanity for centuries seemed simple and obvious within this state of expanded awareness. The nature of consciousness, the origin of the universe, the purpose of creation, the answers were present, self-evident within the universal knowledge field. It wasn't knowledge to be memorized, but a state of being that encompassed understanding. There was a profound sense of awe in the face of this infinite wisdom. My earthly knowledge felt like a single drop in an ocean compared to the boundless depths of understanding available here. It brought a deep humility, realizing how little I had truly known while bound by the limitations of the physical brain and ego. This knowledge wasn't cold or academic. It was imbued with the same love and harmony that permeated the light realm. Understanding the universe was simultaneously an experience of feeling its inherent beauty, order, and benevolent nature. Science and spirituality were not separate here. They were two sides of the same coin, different ways of describing the same fundamental reality. The light beings seemed to act as facilitators, gently guiding my access to different aspects of this universal knowledge field, presenting insights that were most relevant to my soul's journey and the lessons I had integrated. They didn't directly teach in words, but their presence and energetic resonance seemed to unlock specific areas of understanding within my consciousness. I saw how the universe was a self-organizing, intelligent system, constantly creating and evolving, driven by the fundamental energy of love and consciousness. The laws of physics, the patterns of nature, the cycles of birth and death, they were all expressions of this underlying divine intelligence. The feeling of accessing this knowledge was exhilarating. It was like puzzle pieces clicking into place on a cosmic scale. Suddenly, everything made sense. The struggles, the joys, the seemingly random events of life and history were all part of a larger, meaningful pattern. This expanded consciousness also brought an understanding of the potential within each soul. We are not limited beings, we are sparks of the divine, capable of accessing this universal knowledge and contributing to the collective evolution of consciousness. Our earthly limitations are largely self-imposed or necessary for the specific lessons we need to learn in the physical dimension. The light realm wasn't just a place of rest or reunion, it was a state of heightened awareness and learning. The landscapes, the beings, the very air I existed in were infused with this universal knowledge, making the entire environment a living, breathing library of cosmic truth. I understood that the quest for knowledge and understanding on Earth was a reflection of this deeper, innate drive within the soul to connect with the universal truth. Sciences, philosophies, spiritual practices, they were all different paths attempting to glimpse aspects of this same ultimate reality. As this phase of intense knowledge absorption began to settle, I was left with a sense of profound peace and clarity. The big questions that had sometimes troubled me in life no longer held power. I knew, on a fundamental level, that I was part of something vast, meaningful, and infinitely loving. The universe was not a cold, indifferent place, but a conscious, interconnected whole, and I was an integral part of it. The chilling hour of 3:33 a.m. was just the gateway to this astounding truth. Continuing the narrative, after the expansive downloads of universal knowledge had integrated into my consciousness, a subtle change began to occur in the surrounding light realm. It wasn't a diminishing of the light or the love, but a gentle shift in emphasis. The sense of boundless exploration and learning began to give way to an awareness of a boundary. It wasn't a physical wall or a fence. It was more like an energetic threshold, a subtle demarcation point in the fabric of the light. It felt like reaching the edge of a warm, infinite ocean, where the gentle pull towards the shore I had come from began to assert itself against the desire to drift deeper into the luminous depths. The light beings were still present, their energy surrounding me with unwavering love. But their communication shifted. It became less about universal truths and more about my journey, my path, The awareness arrived not as a spoken question, but as a clear, undeniable understanding transmitted directly into my consciousness. I had a choice. I could choose to remain here, in the light, in this state of perfect peace, love, and understanding, integrated into the cosmic whole. Or I could choose to return to my physical life, to the body I had left behind at 3:33 a.m., to continue my journey there. The weight of this choice was immense. Remaining in the light felt like the most natural, most desirable option imaginable. Why would anyone willingly leave this state of pure bliss? This feeling of being utterly loved and accepted. This access to infinite peace and knowledge, to go back to the struggles, the pain, the limitations, the confusion of earthly existence. My soul yearned to dissolve fully into the light, to become one with this perfect reality forever. It felt like my true home, the destination I had been seeking my entire life. But the glimpse of my soul's purpose, hinted at by the light beings, and the profound lessons from the life review, pulled at me from the other direction. I had seen the tapestry of my life, understood the intricate web of my connections to others, and realized the lessons I was meant to learn and the contributions I was meant to make. I saw the faces of my loved ones still on earth, their lives continuing, and felt the enduring threads of love that bound me to them. The choice wasn't presented as a test or an obligation from the light. It was offered with infinite respect for my free will. The light simply was, and it knew my path. But the decision to walk it was mine alone. The light beings conveyed that while staying was an option, and a beautiful one, there was still energy associated with my earthly life, a potential yet to be fully realized, lessons yet to be embodied in the physical form. The contemplation was internal, a rapid, deep dive into my own desires and understanding within the timelessness of the light. One part of me screamed, "Stay? You're home. This is perfect." The other part, informed by the recent influx of knowledge and the emotional resonance of the life review and reunions, whispered of purpose, of unfinished connections, of the unique value of the earthly experience. Difficult as it was, I thought about the lessons learned, the importance of love in action, the power of forgiveness lived in the physical realm, the cultivation of empathy through real-world interactions. Could those lessons be fully integrated and expressed only by returning? The light realm offered pure understanding, but Earth offered the messy, challenging, yet fertile ground for practicing that understanding, for embodying those truths in the face of limitation and adversity. I recalled the glimpse of my potential future, not as a fixed destiny, but as pathways influenced by my choices. There were opportunities to grow, to serve, to share the love and knowledge I had gained, in ways that could only be done from within the physical dimension. The timestamp of 3:33 a.m. felt less like the end of my story and more like an interlude, a cosmic timeout for recalibration. The light beings didn't pressure me, but their presence seemed to underscore the value of the earthly mission. They conveyed that while this realm of light was our ultimate source and home, the experience of individuated consciousness within the physical universe was also incredibly valuable for the evolution of the collective. Each soul's journey, with its unique challenges and triumphs, contributed to the expansion of universal consciousness. Choosing to return felt like stepping back into a heavy suit of armor after experiencing weightless freedom. It meant leaving behind the perfect peace, the effortless understanding, the constant embrace of unconditional love, to re-enter a world of duality, pain, and illusion. Yet, it also felt like accepting a sacred task, a commitment made on a soul level before this life began. There was no deadline on the choice, yet there was a sense that the opportunity was present now. The energetic alignment that had occurred at 3:33 a.m. had opened the door, and it would remain open for this decision. My heart, or what felt like my heart in this form, was torn. The allure of staying was immense, a siren song of ultimate peace. But the quiet voice of my soul's purpose, amplified by the clarity of the light, reminded me of the reasons I had come to Earth in the first place. It wasn't just for me, it was for others, for the ripple effect of love and understanding I could create. In the end, the choice felt less like a sacrifice of bliss and more like an acceptance of responsibility. The unconditional love of the light wasn't diminished by returning. It was meant to be carried back, to illuminate the earthly path. The knowledge gained wasn't just for my own enlightenment. It was meant to inform my actions and interactions in the physical world. With the loving gaze of the light beings upon me, and the knowledge of my loved one's peace held within me, I made my choice. It was a quiet affirmation, a telepathic yes directed towards the light, acknowledging the path that awaited me. The perfection of the light realm was not a prison to escape, but a source of strength and wisdom to draw upon. My journey, interrupted at 3:33 a.m., was meant to continue. The moment my consciousness affirmed the choice to return, the boundless light didn't dim, but its focus intensified around me. The pervasive sense of infinite possibility narrowed, honing in on the specific pathway that now lay before me. The light beings, and the collective consciousness of the light itself, communicated the specific reasons for my return with undeniable clarity. It wasn't a command, but a confirmation of the soul contract I had made before this lifetime began. A purpose woven into the fabric of my being that the earthly journey was designed to fulfill. The primary reason, amplified by the love I had felt for my living family during the contemplation phase, was the continuation of my connections with them, my children, my partner, my parents, my siblings, the bonds of love that I had seen so clearly in the life review and felt so deeply during the reunion with those who had passed. These were threads of energy vital to both my growth and theirs. My journey was intertwined with theirs, and there were shared lessons still to be learned, love still to be given and received. The light showed me that abandoning these connections prematurely would leave an energetic imbalance, an unfinished symphony of souls. Beyond the personal connections, there was a broader purpose, illuminated by the universal knowledge I had accessed. It was related to the lessons of love, forgiveness, and interconnectedness that had been so profoundly integrated. My return wasn't just to live again, but to embody these truths, to bring the energy of the light back into the physical world. However imperfectly, my specific skills, experiences, and relationships were the unique tools given to me to express this universal energy in a way only I could. The light reinforced that the challenges and difficulties of earthly life were not obstacles to this purpose, but integral parts of it. It is through navigating pain, conflict, and limitation that we truly learn empathy, practice unconditional love, and cultivate resilience. Staying in the light realm offered pure understanding, but returning offered the opportunity for experiential mastery. My soul needed the friction of physical reality to truly hone its energetic expression of love and wisdom. There wasn't a specific, dramatic mission presented, like saving the world. It was more nuanced, more personal, yet ultimately universal in its impact. It was about living consciously, choosing love over fear in everyday moments, being a source of positive energy in my interactions, and continuing my own journey of learning and growth. The 3:33 a.m. timestamp now felt like the moment I was given a cosmic pep talk and a clearer set of instructions for the rest of the race. The light being showed me potential future scenarios, pathways that could unfold depending on the choices I made upon my return. They weren't showing me a fixed destiny, but highlighting the opportunities for growth and contribution that awaited me if I chose to live in alignment with the lessons learned. It was like seeing a map with multiple routes. With the understanding that the destination continued, soul growth and contribution to the collective remained the same. But the journey could vary based on my conscious choices. Accepting this purpose brought a complex mix of feelings. There was still a pang of longing for the effortless bliss of the light realm, a quiet apprehension about re-entering the density and challenges of the physical world. But overriding these was a deep sense of clarity, determination, and a profound responsibility. I had been given a glimpse behind the curtain of reality, entrusted with powerful truths, and shown my place in the cosmic dance. To waste that knowledge, to retreat into eternal bliss while the journey remained unfinished, felt unthinkable after all I had experienced. The light communicated that my experience wasn't just for me. The insights gained, the feeling of unconditional love, the understanding of interconnectedness, these were meant to be shared, to be expressed, to potentially inspire others. My life story, particularly the chilling moment at 3:33 a.m. that had opened this door, could become a vessel for conveying these truths to a world often steeped in fear and materialism. The reason for my return was, ultimately, love. Love for those I was connected to. Love for the process of soul growth. And love for the universal whole that my individual journey contributed to. It was a call to bring the energy of the light back into the shadows of the physical world, to be a small beacon of the reality that lay beyond. I understood that the challenges I had faced leading up to my death, the struggles that had brought me to that critical moment at 3:33 a.m., were also part of this purpose. They were the catalysts, the necessary forces that had propelled me to the edge of physical existence and opened the door to this profound experience. My life wasn't a series of random events, but a carefully orchestrated, though self-chosen curriculum for soul evolution. The weight of the mission felt heavy, yet the unwavering support of the light and the beings lightened the load. I knew I wouldn't be returning alone. The connection to the light, the knowledge gained, the love of my deceased family. These were resources I would carry within me. Even back in the physical body, this understanding of my purpose wasn't a burden, it was a liberation. It freed me from the trivial pursuits that had sometimes consumed my earthly attention and focused me on what truly mattered. My life now had a deeper meaning, a cosmic significance that transcended the day-to-day struggles. The moment at 3:33 a.m. wasn't an end, but a powerful pivot point, a sacred interruption that had revealed the true path forward. With this clarified purpose imprinted upon my consciousness, the energetic focus of the light around me began to shift again. The gentle pull towards the earthly dimension becoming stronger, more insistent. The time in the light realm was drawing to a close. Once the choice was made and the reasons for my return were crystal clear, integrated into my being by the light and the beings, the focus of the light realm began to shift away from me. It wasn't a rejection, but a redirection of energy. The gentle pull towards the earthly dimension, which I had felt as a subtle suggestion at the boundary, now became an undeniable force, drawing me away from the infinite peace and towards the density of physical existence. It wasn't a journey back through the tunnel I had come through. Not exactly. It felt more like a rapid retraction, a reversal of the expansion I had experienced upon entering the light. The landscapes, the beings, the boundless knowledge, they didn't disappear, but they became less distinct, fading into the pervasive brilliance around me as I was swiftly pulled away from the core of the light. The feeling of being drawn back was incredibly fast, almost jarring after the timeless peace of the light realm. It was like an elastic band snapping back, propelling my consciousness with immense speed away from home and back towards the body I had left. There was no sense of control. I was simply being pulled, guided by the unseen force of my own chosen path. As I moved away from the light, the vibrant, living colors of the realm began to coalesce and blur. The harmonious symphony of tones seemed to condense into a singular, high-pitched frequency. Not unpleasant, but intense. It felt like passing through layers of vibration, each one bringing me closer to the denser energy of the physical world. And then came the feeling of the body. It wasn't a gentle merging. It was more like a sudden, forceful re-entry. One moment I was pure consciousness, limitless and free. And the next, I was slammed back into a vessel of bone, muscle, and pain. The shock was immense. The effortless existence of the light was replaced by the heavy weight of gravity, the confinement of skin and bone, and the overwhelming return of physical sensations. The first sensation was pain, sharp, intense pain, where before there had been none. It was the pain of the condition that had brought me to the brink of death at 3:33 a.m. Now roaring back into my awareness with brutal clarity, it was a stark, immediate contrast to the perfect peace I had just experienced. Then came the feeling of being confined, trapped within this physical form. After the boundlessness of the light realm, the body felt incredibly small, limited, and fragile. The simple act of breathing, which had been unnecessary and unfelt in the light, was now a desperate, gasping struggle. Each breath was a painful reminder of the physical vulnerability I had returned to. There was a jolt, a sudden, internal surge of energy, like a massive electrical current coursing through me. It was the spark of life reigniting, the consciousness reintegrating with the biological machinery. My heart, which had stopped, began to beat again, not with the gentle rhythm of the light's hum, but with a frantic, irregular pounding. Opening my eyes felt incredibly difficult, like lifting heavy weights. The light of the room, dim though it was, seemed harsh and jarring after the soft, pervasive brilliance of the light realm. The familiar sights of my bedroom were strange and foreign, seen through eyes that had just witnessed cosmic landscapes. I could hear sounds again, the beeping of medical equipment, the hushed voices of people around me. These sounds, mundane in life, were now alien and intrusive after the perfect harmony of the light. The world of the physical senses felt loud, chaotic, and overwhelming. The transition was disorienting. Part of my consciousness was still bathed in the memory of the light, the love, the knowledge, while the other part was wrestling with the immediate, undeniable reality of physical pain and limitation. It was like having one foot in two different worlds simultaneously. There was a moment of confusion, a brief period where I wasn't sure where I was or what had happened. The profound experience of the NDE felt both incredibly real and yet like an impossible dream. Had I really been there? Had I really seen and felt those things? The intensity of the physical sensations threatened to drown out the subtle whispers of the spiritual reality. But even through the pain and the disorientation, the core of the experience remained. The feeling of unconditional love, though no longer an external presence, resonated within me. The lessons learned were etched onto my soul. The knowledge gained felt like a hidden current flowing beneath the surface of my physical awareness. Re-entering the body felt like a profound act of sacrifice, a conscious choice to trade spiritual freedom for physical limitation. For the sake of a purpose I now understood. It was difficult, painful, and shocking, but it was also a confirmation that my journey was not over, that the timestamp of 3:33 a.m. was indeed a turning point, not an endpoint. The stark contrast between the spiritual realm and the physical world was a powerful lesson in itself. It highlighted the density and challenges of earthly existence, but also the unique opportunities it provided for growth and learning that were not available in a state of perfect bliss. The spiritual work, I realized, wasn't just about reaching the light, but about bringing the light back with me, integrating its truths into the messiness of human life. It was a painful re-entry, a jolt back into reality. But as consciousness fully reasserted itself in the body, and the faces of worried loved ones began to come into focus, there was also a surge of purpose, a quiet determination to live the life I had been given back, to embody the lessons learned, and to carry the energy of the light back into the world that needed it so desperately. The journey initiated at 3:33 a.m. had come full circle, bringing me back to where I started, but irrevocably changed. The initial days and weeks after returning to my body were a blur of physical recovery and profound internal disorientation. The pain of my physical condition was real and demanding, but the memory of the light, the love, the knowledge, and the peace was equally real, a constant, vibrant counterpoint to the discomfort. Explaining what had happened felt impossible. How could I articulate the boundless expanse of the light, the depth of unconditional love, or the instantaneous access to universal truth to people who were firmly rooted in the physical world? My attempts often sounded like delirium or fantasy, met with kind but skeptical smiles. I quickly learned to be selective about sharing the core experience, keeping the most sacred parts close. But the experience hadn't just been a hallucination or a dream. It had fundamentally, irrevocably changed me. The person who had looked at the clock at 3:33 a.m. and felt life drain away was not the same person who woke up in that hospital bed. The most immediate and significant change was the complete eradication of the fear of death. It was simply gone. I had experienced death, or at least the transition beyond physical life, and found it to be not an end, but a passage to a realm of incredible peace, love, and continued existence. The prospect of death no longer held terror. It held the promise of returning home. This didn't mean I was reckless with my life. Paradoxically, understanding its true value and purpose made me cherish it more deeply. But the existential dread that had sometimes lingered in the background of my former life was utterly dissolved. My spiritual beliefs were no longer just beliefs, they were knowing. I knew, with absolute certainty, that consciousness survives death, that there is a loving, universal force, and that we are all interconnected parts of it. Organized religion, with its doctrines and rituals, felt less important than the direct, personal connection to the divine that I had experienced. My spirituality became less about dogma and more about living in alignment with the truths I had learned: love, forgiveness, empathy. Priorities shifted dramatically. The things that had once consumed my energy, worries about money, status, material possessions, impressing others, seemed trivial and meaningless after witnessing the true currency of the universe: love and the energy of intention. My focus naturally gravitated towards relationships, acts of kindness, personal growth, and contributing positive energy to the world. The rat race of earthly ambition held no appeal compared to the profound purpose I now understood. My capacity for empathy and compassion expanded exponentially. Having felt the pain and joy of others as my own during the life review, I couldn't interact with people in the same way anymore. Their emotions, their struggles, their inherent goodness were more apparent to me. It became physically uncomfortable to be around anger, judgment, or negativity, and I felt a deep, almost visceral need to alleviate suffering and spread love wherever I could. A sense of underlying peace settled within me, even amidst the inevitable challenges and frustrations of daily life. There was a core of calm, a knowing that everything was part of a larger, meaningful process. The worries didn't vanish entirely, but they no longer held the same power. I had seen the bigger picture, and that perspective provided a constant anchor. Physical after effects varied. For a time, I was incredibly sensitive to light and sound, which felt harsh after the harmonious brilliance of the light realm. My energy levels fluctuated wildly. Sometimes I felt boundless energy. At other times, deeply fatigued, as if my body was still integrating the energetic shifts. My senses felt heightened in some ways. Colors seemed more vibrant, sounds more distinct. But the ability to tune out the overwhelming sensory input of the physical world was challenging. Some NDEs report dietary changes or aversions. For me, it was more about craving simplicity and nourishment that felt clean and pure. The most difficult aspect of integration was living as a transformed being in an unchanged world. The disconnect between my internal reality and the external world was immense. It felt like I was speaking a different language, operating on different principles. Conversations about trivial matters felt superficial. Relationships based on ego and expectation felt hollow. I often felt like a stranger in my own life, living in the same body but seeing the world through entirely new eyes. This transformation wasn't easy. There were moments of frustration, loneliness, and a yearning to return to the effortless state of the light. But the lessons learned, the purpose revealed, and the memory of the unconditional love propelled me forward. Living these truths in the challenging environment of Earth was the mission. The next stage of soul growth. The chilling hour of 3:33 a.m. was no longer just the time I almost died. It was the marker of my spiritual rebirth. The experience had been a catalyst, a cosmic wake-up call that had fundamentally altered my understanding of life, death, and the universe. I had died and returned, carrying back with me the undeniable truth of love, the interconnectedness of all things, and the profound meaning inherent in every human life. My journey was far from over. It had just begun. In a way I could never have anticipated. Living with the memory of the light, the knowledge, and the profound truth of that journey, especially the chilling departure point of 3:33 a.m., is a constant process of integration. It's like having seen the blueprint of reality and then having to navigate the construction site with that image seared into your mind. The transformations I described aren't a destination, they're the starting line for a new way of being. And if sharing this experience, peeling back the layers of my soul's journey, can offer even a sliver of that perspective to someone else, then my return was truly for a purpose. So, if you take anything away from my story, from the moments I spent floating in the dark void, speeding through the tunnel of light, or being bathed in unconditional love, let it be this message: the truth that was imprinted on my consciousness in that realm beyond physical death. Love is the most powerful force in existence. It is the fabric of the universe, the energy of creation, the nature of the divine. Every act of love, no matter how small, a kind word, a helping hand, a moment of genuine listening, sends ripples of positive energy through the cosmos. Focus on love in your thoughts, your words, your actions. Cultivate it within yourself and share it generously. It is the only thing you can take with you when you leave this life. And the only thing that truly matters. We are all interconnected. The Life Review showed me this with undeniable clarity. Your energy affects others, and their energy affects you. We are not separate. We are part of a single, vast network of consciousness. Understanding this fosters empathy and compassion. When you hurt another, you hurt a part of yourself and the universal whole. When you love another, you elevate yourself and the entire collective. See the divine spark in everyone you meet. no matter how obscured it may seem. Your life has purpose. Every single life, every single person is here for a reason. It's not about achieving earthly fame or fortune, but about soul growth, learning, and contributing your unique energy to the tapestry of existence. The challenges you face are often precisely the lessons your soul needs to learn to evolve. Embrace them as opportunities for growth, not as punishments. Seek to understand your unique gifts and how you can use them to bring more love and light into the world. Death is not the end. This is the truth I carry most strongly. The physical body is just a temporary vessel for consciousness. When it ceases to function, consciousness continues. There is a realm beyond this one, a place of peace, love, and continued existence. Do not fear death. Live your life fully, authentically, and with love, knowing that the journey continues. There is a loving, non-judgmental reality beyond this one. The light I experienced was pure, unconditional love, accepting me completely with all my flaws and mistakes. You are loved, inherently and eternally, regardless of your past actions. Let go of shame and self-judgment. Strive to be the best version of yourself, not out of fear of punishment, but out of alignment with the loving nature of the universe. Your actions and intentions matter. The life review demonstrated the undeniable law of cause and effect on an energetic level. What you put out comes back to you, and it impacts the world around you. Be mindful of your thoughts, your feelings, your words, and your actions. Choose to create positive energy. Intention is powerful. Align your intentions with love and truth. Forgiveness is crucial for others and for yourself. Holding on to anger, resentment, or guilt is like carrying heavy weights that only hinder your soul's journey and block the flow of universal love. Release them. Forgive those who have harmed you, understanding that their actions often stem from their own pain. And forgive yourself for your mistakes. Learn from them, but don't let them define you. Self-compassion is key to growth. Live consciously and authentically. Strip away the layers of ego and societal expectation. Connect with your true self, that spark of divine consciousness within you. Live in alignment with your values and the truths you resonate with. Don't be afraid to be different, to follow the path that feels right for your soul, even if it goes against the mainstream. Based on my experience, I offer a few gentle warnings. Don't waste your precious time on trivial pursuits that don't nourish your soul or contribute positively to the world. Material possessions and external validation are fleeting. Don't let fear guide your decisions. Choose love instead. Don't hold on to negative emotions. They are toxic to your well-being and create disharmony. Don't underestimate the power of your presence and your interactions. Even the smallest act can have a profound impact. The moment at 3:33 a.m. was my unexpected wake-up call. The chilling hour that became my doorway to truth. It showed me that life is a precious gift, a sacred opportunity for soul growth and the expression of love. Carry the light within you. Live from your heart. Be kind. Be present. And know, deeply know, that you are loved. You are connected. and your journey is far more meaningful than you might realize.